episode of the AMS Podcast. I'm your host, Adrian Michael Soto, discussing things about films past, present, and future. And as you clicked on this video today, we're going to talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And overall, I've enjoyed each of these movies in different manners, some more than others. And I don't want to make this too long of a show. And just by the way I've listed them, as we get to the top 10, I'll go a little more into detail of why I see them more fit as opposed to the others. But overall, the current state of the MCU is right now they're in phase 4. And overall, their phase 4 has been okay thus far. Phase 5. They just ended phase 4, but phase 5 has kind of been subpar. Are they in phase 5? Oh my gosh, phase 5 MCU. Yeah, sorry, they're in phase 5. Phase 4, not a lot of people were fans of, which is fine. I kind of feel in the sense, and I follow stuff online, it was more or less to kind of drive these movies out quickly and ended up being just too rushed. And we got the movies that we got. So without further ado, as I say, I'm going to go through each of them. And the closer we get to the top 10, I'll go into more detail. I've been a comic book fan since I was a kid. I've enjoyed these movies very much in different ways. As I said, I grew up with the 90s Marvel cartoons, the 90s Spider-Man and the X-Men. That was my forte. And then I slowly started reading comic books or learning through each of the comic book characters as some of the movies progressed. I enjoyed the X-Men, Hugh Jackman's X-Men. I enjoyed Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. You had Daredevil, the Punisher, the Fantastic Four. And once Marvel Studios decided to introduce a film franchise with none other than Iron Man, it ended up being in the fact that you got all of these movies for almost 20 plus years, and it ended up being just a fantastic watch and a fantastic outing. And as we proceed here on the list, I'm going to minimize myself. And here we go, starting at number 32. And as I referenced, some of these movies were okay. They had different moments, but not ones that impacted me or I enjoyed more. Number 32, Thor: The Dark World. Good moments with Loki, Thor, introductions to future Avengers movies. Number 31, The Incredible Hulk. Kind of a solo outing, different actor. Later changed the main actor from the Hulk. Number 30, Iron Man 2. Different, definitely an intro from the first Iron Man. Kind of adding in so many characters to build up the Marvel world itself. Then we go into the phase 4, and overall, when I first saw it, I enjoyed it. I didn't love it as other Thor movies and other MCU movies, but it was one of those where, yes, the comedy kind of it made it certain moments and stuff, and it was enjoyable to see. It was fun to see the female version of Thor and Natalie Portman to play off Chris Hemsworth, but there's certain moments that could have been left out to where they could have shown more of the origin of what led to Jane Foster becoming the female Thor. Number 28, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I enjoy Ant-Man. I enjoy Paul Rudd as Ant-Man, and it being just a really good outing or introduction to hopefully what's to come of Kang the Conqueror. Not going to reference the actor's name, And well, I'll reference his name, Jonathan Majors, does a really good job doing this portrayal of this new villain, Kang. And for those who my comic book aficionados, do you agree or disagree with Jonathan Majors' take on Kang? Let me know. And hopefully he can figure out the stuff or situations he's going through. And if it doesn't turn out on his side, then they might do a recasting. But if you don't know what's going on with Jonathan Majors, just Google it. That's another day, another discussion for another day. Then at number 27, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp. Once again, love Paul Rudd and Evangeline Lilly's introduction as the Wasp. She got a little more screen time, more of a presence in this one as opposed to the previous entry I just referenced a second ago. And it ended up being more or less in the sense you get the action moments and the world of Ant-Man himself. And funny stuff, it was kind of unfortunate that, oh my gosh, Michael Pena didn't appear in the third Ant-Man because he was very funny in the other two Ant-Mans. And at number 26, Eternals, another introduction to superhero characters that were basically I wasn't familiar with, but to my comic book fans out there, did you like how they were done and portrayed? Trying to introduce a whole new, different universe, world, and I kind of see where Marvel's sort of headed, but let's see if they can give them another movie or I would say supporting role for what's to come for the MCU within itself. And it's one of those didn't have too much enthusiasm as I have for the higher tier of my favorites. Number 25, Black Widow. For me, looking back on it, yes, they obviously had a plan, but I guess they try to put stuff in what they think is going to come into play. It just basically is a backstory for Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, played by Scarlett Johansson's story. It was done fairly decent, especially her moments with Florence Pugh, who looks to take over the mantle as the Black Widow. They obviously haven't announced that yet, but I feel like it should have come a lot sooner rather than later. But oh well, it's a part of the filmography for the MCU. And as some of these previous entries thus far, we have one off villains and some that are not as top tier as the other villains. Well, minus Loki, which I'll probably reference them in other entries here. Number 24, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. In this, you had a changing of director. They wanted to make it into a horror movie, and they didn't utilize Scarlett Johansson in the way that it was, even though she does her moments in this, because it was supposed to connect to a television series called WandaVision. And overall, I liked it. Not as good as the first one, but I especially like the special cameos that come out in this one. And I lost my ever loving mind. And this will be a minor spoiler, of Sir Patrick Stewart coming back as Professor X in that 90s version of the X-Men, but in his yellow chair with the 90s X-Men theme song playing in the background. I think I was one of the only ones that cheered, or that maybe there was a few, but I went, woo! And I was just excited to hear that. And my younger self would have been is jumping up and down hearing that and seeing that. And the in a film version, and hopefully when Marvel Studios introduces a new version of X-Men, they kind of pay homage or do something similar to that, but with obviously a different actor. And Captain Marvel at number 23, it was another introduction to a hero. I liked the story, especially the introduction to Skrulls, because I had heard of the Skrulls at the time. And now that they're a part of a television series in Secret Invasion, which is a very large comic book series, and seeing what the twists are going to be on that. But overall, not as much impactful, but obviously it was meant not to be impactful, I would say, or maybe I'm wrong, that it becomes more or less the sense of Captain Marvel was just introducing stuff and paying homage to the 90s. Then we have Avengers Age of Ultron at number 22. This one was definitely different from the first one. It introduced new characters in the Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, even though they don't get their names referenced. And they don't use the term mutants because, long story short, Marvel's wasn't allowed to use the word mutants when they made this movie. And I could go into another spiel, and this would be a 3 hour long episode on the specific of certain things. But Ultron was a pretty good villain here, and for what he was given, I could probably hear anybody that might disagree with me, but it's one of those where it was kind of teasing and leading up to the events of Captain America Civil War, certain points in a scene between Captain America and Iron Man. And overall, it's going to be at number 22 for me. At number 21, have Iron Man 3. And this one was different from the second one. And it was changing Tony Stark's arc of him becoming Iron Man and wanting to just see himself in a different manner, or wanting to just protect the people all around the world because he couldn't be everywhere that he was supposed to be. So thus far, kind of put um, Iron Man 3 at 21. And overall, thus far, some of these kind of feel I'm gonna put this in my perspective. I feel that all these movies that I've mentioned thus far, it's becoming more of a studio interference. They'll still let the directors direct their movies, and that's what a lot of these are, and not make them a Marvel movie. So if you hear me or someone that you know is a fan of all this stuff, it was a good movie, but it was an okay movie, but not a great Marvel movie. And when I say Marvel movie, they don't have like all the references and Easter eggs leading up to future stuff. They're just cramming in this and this character comes in, this and this, and just things like that. So that's where I'm sitting at. And now as we go down to number 20, Ant-Man, once again, Paul Rudd. He doesn't age a day. He was very funny in this, and his version of Scott Lang, which is the second portrayal of Ant-Man in the comic books, and the introduction to his friends like Michael Pena, who is just funny once he tries to tell stories and things that happen. And overall, one of those that it's an enjoyable movie that I'll watch even if I play it, I'll stream it, or if it's on TV, I'll sit down and watch it because it's one of those heartwarming type movies and good feel movies of just Scott Lang's Ant-Man just trying to be better and do good and change his life around. At number 19, we have Doctor Strange. Wasn't familiar with Doctor Strange, vaguely, maybe like 10% if anything, but the introduction was really done well. The world and the magic of sorcery overall, and it being just an introduction for Benedict Cumberbatch as well, and it leaving the sense that what was to come on this side, a different type of genre for Marvel, where they brought in the idea of it being this sort of take of this world that what Marvel comics have done in the past. So at Doctor Strange at 19. Number 18, Spider-Man Far From Home. If you all have seen my episode of me ranking the Spider-Man movies, I enjoyed this one, but least out of the other two versions that Tom Holland has done. But I did enjoy the introduction to Mysterio. I'll say it again. The 90s Spider-Man cartoon, the way they did Mysterio in that and his illusions and what he created was pretty much up to par or almost as good as what you get in this movie. And it does a lot of cool Easter eggs and things to come in Marvel itself. So, for the most part, this is definitely one of those that was done very well. I like Tom Holland's interpretation of Spider Man slash Peter Parker and what he's gone through and what I'll explain in just a second. So, I'm leaving that at number 18. Then at number 17, Thor. This was an introduction. I knew of Thor, but obviously knowing like a little bit of his backstory here, the introduction to him, the character arc of what he goes through each of the movies, including the Avengers movies, it's been done very well. Obviously, to some minus Thor: Love and Thunder, but the introduction started off pretty good, and the introduction of what we would get Loki into future movies, one of the top tier Marvel villains in my book, even though it wouldn't match something like Thanos, for example, but we'll get to Thanos in just a second. So Thor at 17. At number 16, it's going to be Captain America, the First Avenger. Reference 90s cartoons, superhero 90s cartoons. I knew of Captain America, and knowing a little bit of his backstory, and knowing kind of, I see his perspective where, well, the film adaptation, I'd probably have to go a little deep in, but the way he was picked on for the size and who he was, I kind of saw it relatable in a way. Kind of go a little on the personal side for just a second. I was picked on for the way I looked back then, and I just lived my life, lived my day, but I didn't let that stop me, and I tried to defend myself. And the way Chris Evans has portrayed Captain America to me has been done very well, like Hugh Jackman as Wolverine and Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. And yes, the silliness of how the editing is done in the war montages. But overall, I'm putting this one not fairly high, but at 16. And at number 15, we have Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Before this movie was released, we unfortunately had the news of the untimely passing of Chadwick Boseman. And as myself and maybe you all as well, kind of thought, how are they going to portray this movie? And the way they did it is pretty flawlessly, in the sense of how they pay homage and honor to the late Chadwick Boseman. I'm not afraid to admit it, but I got pretty emotional from beginning, middle, and end. And definitely what they were able to do and able to lead to possible future movies as well. So at number 15, Wakanda Forever. And now we're going to the top tier stuff. At number 14, Spider-Man Homecoming. This one, for me, was a really good introduction to Tom Holland's Spider-Man. As I said, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield did their own versions of it, and they do it very well, because I'll explain in a second. And this one was more, yes, you do get, even though Spider-Man is not by himself, but you get the mentorship role. You get the mentorship role of Tony Stark's Iron Man, and Tom Holland's character, Peter Parker, is trying to go through this journey of realizing what it takes to be a hero, and you have to sacrifice certain things in different manners. And to me, it was done pretty well. And before we proceed, before I mention the last Spider-Man entry, you could kind of see still as a beginning, middle, and end of just Spider-Man's entry alone, and I'll get into detail in just a second. At number 12, 13, Thor Ragnarok. I know people that are fans of this movie and are not, kind of overhyped, but I enjoyed it due to the fact that Thor goes through again another arc of realizing his potential outside of what he thought he was meant to be in possessing that hammer and utilizing his inner self to become the real God of Thunder, and basically becomes one of those that, especially minor spoiler, when he realizes what he has of the stuff himself, um, the moment the moment of when he's uses his abilities for thunder and the Led Zeppelin song comes on, I lost my ever loving mind, got goosebumps. It was so exciting, and that it ended up just being really cool to watch and see. And overall, as we go into number 12, give me just a second here. I'm gonna just silence my phone. Make sure. Okay, I'm back. At number 12, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I enjoy the Guardians of the Galaxy film series overall. This one was different from part 2. And once again, as you might have seen my movie review on the channel, just the way James Gunn is able to put compose music and songs of the past with all these characters, and the story arc is done very well. And it's definitely just, I enjoyed it fairly well. And for the most part, the Guardians, they kind of connect with the MCU and they kind of don't. And that's what I kind of like about the Guardians themselves. They're teasing, just processing the story. Stuff gets referenced from the Marvel movies, but not as much. And just each of these characters has been just so cool to watch and see. At number 11, have Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This was Marvel's interpretation of introducing a kung fu style movie and a story about family, acceptance, finding your place and where you belong. And yes, you in the third act you get a CGI fest. That's what most of these are. But overall, just the story and what it takes for each of these to just, and especially introduce a character that has been around for quite some time. And overall, I really enjoyed Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And now we're going to the cream of the crop. This is my top 10. And by all means, you let me know if you disagree on the order thus far. And then just going to go in a little more detail, the top 10 here. At number 10, Guardians of the Galaxy Part 1, the first one. The introduction to the vast majority of all these different characters, who they are, and how they start off. And later, as you might see, I haven't referenced another movie from this film series. Just the mix of the music, the visuals, and just overall a really good introduction to all of these characters. I've enjoyed it. And I know CDs to some are not a thing, but at the time I purchased the CD. I play the music in my car, and yes, the music is the songs are stuff from the past, but the way it is utilized in the storytelling was just enjoyable to watch. And overall, it was really fun to see. At number 9, we have the first Avengers. And before this first Avengers was released, you got all the introductions, the movies of all the main characters, and just overall, the overarching main point where they finally become the team themselves was really cool to see. I believe this was back in 2012 at the time, so a little bit younger what I am now. But as for me, the kid at heart it ends up becoming more in the sense of I just enjoyed watching the spectacle and the atmosphere of this team of heroes that I thought I never would have seen in a feature film and something like this. And at number 8, Captain America the Winter Soldier. This was Marvel's take on the spy genre, and it ended up becoming more in the sense of what you thought of the Marvel universe, the Marvel world completely changed because of different moments that led to you thought these guys were good guys, and it ends up becoming the opposite. Captain America um, finding his buddy Bucky, the fight scenes, the different moments, and just the way the landscape of what the MCU was going to change and overall deal with later on down the line. Number 7, I give more praise to the first Black Panther as opposed to the second, even though I just said I still loved what they did for the second Black Panther. And the reason being is that this comic book character started out in 1966 and was done by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, or I might be wrong, but obviously Stan Lee was a part of the creation. And just basically at the time, this was at the time when Black Panther was created, that it was a time of during racism segregation. So the vast majority of storytelling that Black Panther had in the comic books, Ryan Coogler was able to do his own interpretation of this and just really, I think, flawlessly did a decent job of portraying not just Black Panther, his sister, his mom, the other side characters, the villain, Killmonger, which is gonna definitely be top tier Marvel villain on my end. And yes, I heard even the tropes of it's kind of like Lion King. Well, Lion King was taken from Shakespeare, I believe. Macbeth. I might be wrong on that, but overall, just on the music itself alone as well, just kind of made me enjoy Black Panther fairly well. And at number 7, at number 6, Spider-Man: No Way Home. As I kind of stated briefly earlier, it ended up becoming in the sense that Spider-Man, Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man, finally kind of completed his intro to then going, no spoilers, to then going solo and becoming the main character Spider-Man. And his intro had to involve 3 movies. So, as I said, I won't go into spoilers and details, but you do get the cameos of, well, okay, minor spoilers, because I just said cameos, but you do get the cameos of Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, as they pay homage to their movies and the references. And it, once again, I'm an emotional guy, not afraid to admit it. It got me emotional in certain parts. You've seen the movie, you know what it was. And it just left me entertained and knowing what's to come now as Tom Holland portrays Spider Man as the friendly neighborhood Spider Man in that different manner. And now we're going to the top 5. And forgive me, but what was supposed to happen is number 5 here at the middle for Iron Man, number 4 for Civil War, and number 3 for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So at number 5, so you all know it is Iron Man, and I just enjoyed, besides Captain America: The First Avenger, this introduction of all the Marvel heroes just a little bit more of what you think Tony Stark is supposed to be portrayed as, and he ends up changing his arc and who people perceive him as from becoming the billionaire playboy philanthropist to a hero he was chosen or meant to be. And especially just the iconic moments, the introduction where he dodges a tank and he shoots it down with a tiny little missile. Just overall, a one of the top tier for me on my end introduction. I love all these heroes, but for me, I would say the introduction to this one in particular is gonna deserve the top 10 on my end. And at number 4, Captain America: Civil War. And the reason for this is because yes, I heard, to those who've seen this movie, I heard it as being Avengers 2.5. But if we don't have this movie, then the storyline of what was to come in Avengers Infinity War wouldn't have taken place. And especially the arc between Captain America and Tony, and what causes the split or the division between the Avengers. The introduction to Spider Man and Black Panther, fantastic. And Baron Zemo is the kind of the villain in this one, and what he does to cause the tension between Captain America and Iron Man. He basically, minor spoiler, they asked him, "Do you think he won?" Because he ends up getting arrested. And it's like he pretty much won because he kind of had that chance of splitting up the Avengers, which led to Avengers Infinity War of the split because they had to find ways to take Thanos not all together but in two different teams. And overall, I'm putting Captain America: Civil War at number 4. At number 3, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. If you've seen my movie review, I believe I stated, and I sit with this, this is not just a very well done comic book trilogy, but overall a film trilogy. Because if what it looks like, if this was the end, no spoilers, this is a perfect end to this trilogy of characters that have grown. Their stories have changed from the beginning to the second and then to the third. The music, once again, yes, it's music of the past, and but the way it plays in the different moments, Star Lord, Rocket, Groot, Gamora, Drax, Nebula, and Mantis, Kraglin, Cosmo the dog, all those characters on that poster you see, it basically just has led to the fact that it is a story that is was just really fun to see, and to experience. And in the third act, the song by the Beastie Boys, "No Sleep in Brooklyn," gets played. And when I say it ends up becoming a moment that a moment that is just exciting to experience and exciting to see, it was just awesome. And yes, each third act moment in some of these movies is cheesy to say the least. I hear it. I'm not saying it's cheesy, but I hear it on the webs, and it just becomes one of those that I just had a blast. And it's at my number 3. Like I said, the way this software works, or I guess number 5, Iron Man; number 4, Captain America: Civil War; and at number 3, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, the final 2. At number 2, Avengers Infinity War; and number 1, Avengers Endgame. And for me, I enjoyed Infinity War as much as I did with Endgame, because I heard once at the time of this movie's release, it ended up becoming that Avengers Infinity War is like the Empire Strikes Back of movies, because where it leaves you and how are the heroes going to figure out, or what are they going to do in the next movie. Some of these characters in the Infinity War poster have their moments to shine. You get to know a little more about them. A lot of funny moments, a lot of, I'm not going to say the word, but WTF moments. And then, especially in the end, I remember when I saw the movie the first time, I saw it 3 times, I think, but the first time, you just hear gasps like, what? No, no, no. And if you know the movie, obviously you know how it ends. And you can even YouTube reactions on the way of the ending of the movie. And I enjoy it as much as all the other ones, but it's just the level and what they did to make it. I'm putting Avengers Infinity War at number two. And at number one, as we are about to conclude the episode here, I'm going to put Avengers Endgame. And it's one of those, as if you would have told, as I've referenced before in the past, my younger self, that you would have seen this kind of movie to end like if it was a TV series, a season finale of all these episodes, uh, also or movies, in the sense of movies coming together and basically coming to the end and making sure that you get each of these characters to have their moments to shine. And it ends up being in the fact that, once again, you're on a thrill ride, ups and downs, and the heroes that have been a part of these series have their proper moments to say farewell and to introduce possible future heroes for the future and future movies going on for the future. But man, I got goosebumps on both of these two movies. As I said, if you follow me on Instagram, I enjoy these movies thoroughly. You met me in person. I could easily switch them looking back on it, just depending, I guess, in the sense, yes, Avengers Endgame becomes more of the spectacle, but the moment where Captain America's facing Thanos, then you get the surprise. I would want that for a picture framed on the wall. I would want a lot of each of these movies moment pictures on the wall, and it ends up being just one of those that's what I like about all these movies in general. Yes, other non-comic book movies, I could have a future episode later of famous movie scenes that could end up being a moment, or the quote or the moment can be placed on like a picture frame on a wall and just pretty much shared. And before I say farewell, give me a second here. This is hard to put on. Everybody is a fan. I'm going to try and hold this with the mic. It's not really movable. Everybody's a fan of something. I always say this to people. Embrace your fandom. You're a fan of horror movies. Go check out the horror movies. Independent. You're a fan of action, science fiction, fantasy. Share your fandom. Yes, as I said, I enjoy all these movies. Uh, the ones in the top tier more than the others. I'll maybe occasionally revisit them down in the past, down the line. But overall, that's kind of like where I see everything of these movies thus far. And I'm going to, as you can see here, this is not really movable. I can only really move my wrists, but um, courtesy of Stark Industries. As you see, I show my fandom and my nerdom towards these movies. And like I said, do what you love, enjoy what you love. I have enjoyed this film series. I enjoy all comic book movies overall. I'm going to continue to enjoy them. Some of them might not be the greatest ever, or you might be, okay, that was a movie. Would I revisit it? Not really. But that's up for you to decide. As you've seen in the time of what this recording has been thus far, I've given you the different reasons of why I've enjoyed the most to the least, and that's it. Like I said, enjoy what you love. I love these in different ways. I know my comic book fans out there, movie fans that enjoy these movies. You let me know on your list. Let me know what's better, what's the worst. And in the meantime, that's it, guys, for this episode. I'm your host, Adrian Michael Soto, discussing things about films past, present, and future. I'll see you all next time. Bye bye for now.